Everyone, and welcome to the May 16, 2023 County Board meeting. I am Board Chair Christian Dorsey. I'll be presiding this evening along with my colleagues, Mr. Carantonis, Ms. Crystal, and Mr. DeFerranti. Vice Chair Garvey is traveling and will not be with us today. We are going to begin our meeting today with some recognitions and reports from the board and the manager, and to kick us off with an employee care spotlight is our county manager, Mr. Schwartz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we took a break last month, but this month we are going to have our CARES employee spotlight for 8 DES employees. We have 4 of them with us today. And if I have it right, we have Spencer and Jeffrey Barnes. Raise your hand. Oh, wait, yeah, you guys look exactly like you did when I talked to you before. And then we have Kevin and Oscar. Raise your hand. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on here. We have a group of employees who work in the Department of Environmental Services. I'm going to talk about the 8 people who we're recognizing today. First, we have Kevin and Oscar, Kevin Corrales Sierra and Oscar Larios Corrales. This duo, you'll get the theme here. You'll figure out the connections. The brothers have been working at DES for 5 years total and helping keep our Water Sewer Streets Division moving smoothly. We had another brother, stepfather, 3 people who can't join us today: Ricardo Garcia Carrillas, Jose Garcia Carrillas, and Chris Soto, who's the stepfather, who among the 3 of them, that family has 23 years of experience at DES, again, working in water sewer streets. We have Spencer and Jeffrey, who just met. This father and son have been with us for a total of 15 years, if I have that right. We have another brother, father, and son trio, Pedro, Mariano, and Wilmer Aparicio, who couldn't join us, but they have all worked in our Water Sewer Streets Division for over 30 years. And then the Siricul family, who couldn't be with us today. That is, I'm not even going to pretend to be able to describe the relationship between the brothers, the uncles and nephews, the father and the son, but that foursome has a total of 80 years together. And then we had Lloyd Floyd and Larry Washington, who couldn't join us today, but they have over 60 years of service, and Larry recently retired with 30 years of service. And so this is a snapshot, and it doesn't actually cover all the family connections down at Water Sewer Streets and DES. And these are the guys who are out there helping with infrastructure, trash collection, facilities, water, wastewater. They are really the backbone of our community that keep everything going. So I'm going to ask the 4 of you guys to come on up with Mike. We'll come up here to the front, Mike Moon and Mike Collins. Oh, if your name is Mike, you can come up. And I'm gonna hand you some certificates, and then you'll have the honor of a lifetime to have your picture taken with the county board.
Yeah. Thank you.
How's that?
Much better.
Exactly.
Right, 1, 2, 3.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, guys. Okay, so I'm done for the moment. Thank you, Mr. Dorsey.
Thank you very much, Mr. Schwartz. And in honor of the recently occurring Mother's Day, we should have also recognized the mothers who permit these fathers and sons and uncles and brothers to do this work. So be sure to be good to your mamas and spouses and everything else. That's delightful just to hear about the familial connections down at Trades. And thank you for honoring these workers today, Mr. Schwartz. So we are going to move next with a series of proclamations. And first, I'd like to recognize Bike Month. And before I do so, I'd like to tell you about a recent experience that I had that was just absolutely delightful. Invited by a member of our community to take part in what they were lovingly referred to as the BC bus, or in English, the bike bus, a caravan that goes periodically, taking kids from various stops along the county to their ultimate destination at Escuela Key Elementary School. And I got a chance to join this caravan and see it grow in size as it traversed from Courthouse through Points West. Ultimately, probably at least 30 or so children participated, as well as a number of parents, and it was a well-tuned operation that was just really terrific. Seeing kids getting an opportunity to be active as they go to school, certainly preparing them for a day of learning with their bodies and their minds activated and refreshed was great, but to see that they also learned good road safety rules and got the comfort of riding safely in a caravan of others was absolutely terrific. And I know that the organizers of this would love to see other households develop their own initiatives to safely transport kids to school. So if anybody is ever interested in this, I'd be sure to be happy to serve as a conduit, because it was truly a fantastic experience. And so with that, I'd like to read this proclamation in honor of Bike Month. Whereas bicycle commuting is an effective means to improve air quality, reduce traffic congestion, and conserve energy, and whereas bicycle commuting benefits both employees and employers through better health and fitness and reduced commuting and parking costs, and whereas Arlington County is home to an expansive bicycle network, including some of the region's most popular bicycle trails, and whereas Arlington has a growing population of cyclists who are actively involved in shaping county, regional, state, and national transportation and community policies, and whereas Arlington is recognized as a silver-level bicycle-friendly community by the League of American Bicyclists and strives to improve on this status, and whereas the National Center for Safe Routes to Schools has designated May 3rd, 2023 to be National Bike and Roll to School Safety Day, and whereas the League of American Bicyclists has declared the week of May 15th through 19th, 2023 to be Bike to Work Week, and whereas the National Capital Region Transportation Planning Board has proclaimed this Friday, May 19th, to be Bike to Work Day throughout the Washington metropolitan region, of which Arlington is a part. Now therefore I, Christian Dorsey, Chair of the County Board of Arlington, Virginia, do hereby proclaim May 2023 as Bike Month in Arlington County, and urge all residents to support and participate in these and other activities that contribute to the health of the community and the environment. We are pleased to have some staff who are here to accept this proclamation that I would like to present. And one of them I'd like to just mention specifically, because he's going to be celebrating a semi-retirement coming up on May 23rd, Mr. Henry Dunbar. And we would like to thank Henry for his decade of work advocating and advancing the interests of bicycling in Arlington County. Those of you who know Henry know that he has an unwavering passion for bicycling, and his drive to make riding more accessible for all has truly been met and helped transform our community. The countless number of people who have learned to ride a bike, or in my case, to properly care for a bike at the tutelage of Henry, is really a testament to his dedication. And Henry's work on Capital Bike Share, as well as Bike Arlington, has made him a beloved fixture on our local trails and at community events. And I know that you're going to be super busy this week. He's always ready to lend advice or even a helping hand to people who need it. And certainly there are many who are much more confident riding, not only the bike, but riding throughout Arlington because of Henry's efforts. And so he has been a steadfast colleague, leading and mentoring many young staff and making Bike Arlington a great place to work. And we know that he will continue to have an immense impact even in semi-retirement, because Henry is far too young to give up on something that he is so passionate about. So good luck, Henry. Thank you very much. And it's my pleasure to invite you up so that you can receive this, perhaps for the very last time.
inviting my colleagues to literally pass the torch.
Oh.
Take note of day-to-day operations.
All right, I'll stand up there.
We can.
Center stage.
There we go.
All right, 1, 2, 3. Thanks.
On that side.
Thank you, Henry, Raymond, and Mary. We appreciate it, and I think many of us will see you and team around the region on Friday. Next, I'd like to commemorate National Public Works Week. And this proclamation reads as follows. Whereas public works infrastructure, facilities, and services are of vital importance to sustainable communities and to the health, safety, and well-being of the people of Arlington County, and whereas dedicated public works professionals in Arlington are responsible for planning, designing, building, and operating public works facilities and services, including transportation, water treatment and supply, solid waste systems, and other essential public works activities. And whereas Arlington County recognizes the contributions of public works professionals and extends sincere appreciation for their commitment to excellence in their efforts to improve and enhance the health, safety, welfare, and prosperity of the county. And whereas 2023 marks the 63rd annual National Public Works Week, sponsored by the American Public Works Association, which continues to promote an understanding of and appreciation for the role public works projects play in sustaining economic growth and safety and vitality. Now, therefore, I, Christian Dorsey, Chair of the County Board of Arlington, Virginia, do hereby proclaim May 21st through 27th, 2023 is National Public Works Week in Arlington, and urge all residents to recognize the contributions of public service professionals and the services they provide to our community and to the environment. We have a number of DES staff who are in attendance, including the AFOR recognized brother connection. So I'd like to invite you all up to the front so I can present this to you and take another picture. Y'all getting the drift about what this is all about. Mike, do you want to accept?
Sure.
All right.
All right.
Look, we get pictures all the time. What are we doing?
You guys shift to the right. There, you're good. Okay, great. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys.
Next, I'd like to recognize Building Safety Month. May is a very popular month for months. So whereas Arlington County recognizes that our growth and strength as a locality depend on safe homes, buildings, and infrastructure, both in daily life and when disasters strike, and whereas our confidence in the resilience of the buildings in our community is achieved through attentiveness of vigilant guardians, building safety and fire prevention officials, architects, engineers, builders, tradespersons, design professionals, laborers, plumbers, and others in the construction industry who work year-round to ensure the safe construction of buildings. And whereas these guardians are experts in the built environment to create and implement the highest quality codes to protect us in the buildings where we live, learn, work, and play. And whereas these modern building codes include safeguards to protect the public from hazards such as hurricanes, snowstorms, tornadoes, wildland fires, floods, and earthquakes, and whereas Building Safety Month is sponsored by the International Code Council to remind the public about the critical role of our community's largely unknown protectors of public safety, our local code officials, who assure us of safe, sustainable, and affordable buildings that are essential to our prosperity. And whereas it starts with you, the theme for Building Safety Month 2023, seeks to raise awareness about building safety on a personal, local, and global scale. And whereas each year in observance of Building Safety Month, people are asked to support the improvement of building safety, resilience, and economic investment at home and in the community, and to acknowledge the essential service provided to all in Arlington by the Inspection Services Division and the Fire Marshal Office in protecting lives and property. Now, therefore, I, Christian Dorsey, Chair of the Board of Arlington, Virginia, do hereby proclaim the month of May as Building Safety Month in Arlington, and I encourage all citizens to join us as we participate in Building Safety Month activities. To accept this proclamation, I know that our Chief Building Official, Shahryar Amiri, is here, and I believe that Chief Inspector Cobb is also here, and anyone else who is a part of the guardians who help protect us through sustainable and safe buildings, please come on up and accept the proclamation.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
Well, Chief is taking a picture. All
Oh,
right,
that's
look
right.
at that.
Make him earn his keep. Thank you, guys.
All right. Now transition to actually not a proclamation, to issue a proclamation, but to also recognize May as Mental Health Awareness Month. And there will be some events upcoming where a proclamation from the board will be read. But as we think about May as Mental Health Awareness Month, it's an opportunity for us to really take stock and update the community on some key initiatives that have been a priority in Arlington County. So our Crisis Intervention Center, something that we have talked about for a while, is holding a ribbon cutting on May 22nd to celebrate an expansion of services. And there I will read the official proclamation of May as Mental Health Awareness Month. But the great thing about the grand opening or the ribbon cutting that will occur next week is that we can operationalize the new developments of transfer of custody policies that will allow law enforcement to drop off individuals in crisis instead of having to remain on site. This will benefit both clients, but also allow for law enforcement to get back to other duties, creating great efficiency and reducing stress. And the Crisis Intervention Center will also be able to provide 23-hour-a-day crisis stabilization. We also are pleased to announce that there has been an agreement with National Capital Treatment and Recovery, an organization formerly known as Phoenix House. The new agreement will bring outpatient and intensive outpatient substance abuse treatment for adolescents. This fills a big void in our network of substance abuse treatment options, and there will be a virtual open house that will occur on May 25th for anyone who is seeking additional information. As we have talked about before, the county is continuing to advance an agreement with VHC Health to advance a project through the community process with a goal of opening sometime late in calendar year 2025 to build a facility at the site of the former VHC Urgent Care Center on South Carlin Springs Road. And this will fill some really important gaps by providing 24 beds in an adolescent unit, a 24-bed adult unit, a 24-bed recovery and wellness unit, a 14-bed geriatric unit, outpatient programs, and also 40 inpatient rehabilitation beds for individuals with brain and spinal cord injuries and who've also suffered from stroke or have other neurological conditions. So tremendous, tremendous capacity in our system that does not exist and that will be coming soon. And then we also have mobile support teams, otherwise known as MOST. This is being moved forward with nearly $400,000 grant, which will increase mental health and substance abuse treatment through compassionate responses, such as call diversion and acting on referrals from stakeholders. And this will decrease the role of non-clinical first responders. Also provide alternatives to incarceration for individuals who are engaged in what are generally considered nuisance behaviors, but not serious crimes. And it will also decrease emergency department visits as well as psychiatric hospital admissions. And with our public schools, who are also experiencing challenges with mental health among the student population, we have ramped up efforts to partner with APS and work with students, working to add 4 locally funded DHS behavioral health therapists who can provide therapy and case management in our schools. The therapists will be based primarily in high schools with the flexibility to work in middle schools if there is a need there as well. That will be something that will be implemented at the start of the 2023 to 2024 school year. And on the school side themselves, they are actively working to support the mental health needs of their student community by hosting community conversations, expanding their preventative education to include 4th and 5th graders, providing extensive training in the use of naloxone for their staff, providing naloxone boxes in high schools in the event of any emergencies. And they've also budgeted to add 10 FTE, 10 intervention counselors and 2 substance abuse counselors across the school division. And the Arlington Addiction Recovery Initiative is continuing to host Narcan trainings, and they hold them virtually the first Wednesday of every month at noon and 7:00 p.m. And they also have in-person trainings on the 3rd Wednesday of each and every month. And we continue to see tremendous interest in the community being trained in the effective use of naloxone, and we encourage everyone to participate, because not only is it something that could be vitally life-saving, of vital life-saving importance, it's also quite easy to do, as we demonstrated at a board meeting not too long ago. So in conclusion, I have highlighted just a few items that relate to mental health and substance use here. What this shows is that we have a lot of resources available today, and even more that are going to be coming online in the not too distant future. And so this is an issue that unfortunately we as a nation are grappling with, and we as a county are not immune, but we will do all that we can to support our community so that they can not only thrive physically, but mentally as well, and live the fullest, richest lives possible. So I'll invite everyone to attend the ribbon cutting at the Crisis Intervention Center next week on May 22nd. At this time, I see our featured guests have arrived, and we're excited to host a presentation on Northern Virginia Community College, one of the great partners in the pipeline of opportunities for students, as well as a key component in the workforce pipeline to deal with a rapidly changing employment sector. So we are fortunate that Margaret Chung, who is Arlington's appointee to the Nova College Board and the principal at the Arlington Career Center, is here, along with Dr. Annette Hagray, who's provost at the Nova Alexandria campus, as well as Dr. Kress Welcome, president of Northern Virginia Community College. And we welcome you and are excited to hear what you have to share with us this afternoon. And those microphones need to have, you need to press the push button and see the red light before it's on.
Great.
You're good.
Thank you. Thank you, Board Chair Dorsey, and your fellow county board members, and County Manager Mark Schwartz. I am Margaret Chung, and I am honored to be your appointee to the Northern Virginia Community College Board. I also currently serve on the board's Academic, Curriculum, and Workforce Committee, and was recently selected by my peers to serve as the next vice chair. This is also my 9th year as the principal of Arlington Career Center. Our strategic and critical partnership with Nova has afforded our students with an unprecedented number of college credits through dual enrollment. I am proud to share that this year, 15 of our students will earn an associate's degree upon their high school graduation, 11 of which will be in computer science. Thank you for this opportunity to update the board, and thank you especially for your constant support of the college. Please view NOVA as an essential strategic asset for the region. In order of appearance, the following members of the NOVA board, NOVA leadership, will be joining this presentation. As you mentioned, Dr. Annette Hagre, the NOVA Alexandria Provost, and Dr. Ann Kress, NOVA's president. Next slide, please. As you can see from this slide, NOVA is indeed quite large. Because of the size, NOVA can offer 63 associate degree programs that lead to direct employment or university transfer, and 164 workforce programs and courses to meet the specific skills needed of area employers. While our large size is well known, what needs to be pointed out is the small size of our classes, an average of 24, and that all our classes are taught by professors, not teaching assistants. Next slide, please. With this slide, what I most want you to keep in mind is that NOVA has proven itself to be the top supplier of educated or trained talent in the region. And next slide. Finally, in cooperation with our school system, NOVA provided college credit instruction to 830 APS high school students during the most recent academic year. This equates to an effective scholarship for Arlington families of close to $1 million. Accordingly, the investments you have and continue to make in your community college are being returned manyfold. Our next speaker will be Dr. Annette Hagre. Provost Hagre will provide you with a more detailed look at the Alexandria campus, cited where the boundaries of Alexandria, Fairfax, and Arlington come together.
Thank you, Margaret. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for the opportunity to share some brief highlights about the Alexandria campus. I have served at the campus now for a little over 8 years, and I've come to know the campus and the community and the relationships that we have built over time, and we're just very grateful for the partnership with Arlington Public Schools. And we have seen significant growth in enrollment, particularly dual enrollment, because of the partnership that we have with APS. And our goal is to provide the best quality educational opportunities and services and support for our students, our families, and the community that we can. And that includes programs and courses that lead to transfer to four-year institutions, as well as dual enrollment and the early online college courses that you probably have heard about. So very briefly, what you see before you is a slide that really just lays out the diversity of our campus. As you can see, we are diverse not only in terms of the race and ethnicity of our students, but the ages of our students, the genders of our students, and the course-taking patterns of our students. You see that 16.7% of our students attend college full-time, which means the majority of our students are part-time. And so we recognize what that means for our students, that they are really trying to attend school while they have many other competing priorities. We also have diversity that almost parallels some of our communities with the numbers you see on the right side of the screen. And we are pleased to say that a little over 12% of the Arlington County High School grads attended NOVA in this past year. So we're very pleased and proud about that. Next slide, please. You'll see there that we have a number of transfer and degree programs, and you heard Margaret speak earlier about the number of programs that we offer through all of our campuses at NOVA. And what you don't see there is our largest program, which is called General Studies, which is a transfer program. It allows students to get their general education coursework done so that they can transfer more easily to a four-year institution. Many of our students enroll in our business administration program. That is a very popular program. And we are seeing growth continually in our computer science, cybersecurity, IET programs, as well as our science programs. Then as it relates to our skills and trades programs, we are very, very proud of our programs that are really meeting the needs of the workforce, our business and industry needs. And these include our automotive and technology collision repair program, which as we speak is really heavily involved in planning for the expansion of hybrid electric car training for our campus and our college. So we're very excited about that. And we have faculty who are continuing to look for ways to expand other programs that you see there as well, so the individuals who are seeking employment more quickly are able to get those credentials and move into the workforce. Construction management is another example of a program that we expect to grow as it has been. And also, our substance abuse rehabilitation certificate is a program that we expect also will see some additional momentum because of the needs, some of which you've heard here tonight. We want to make sure that we are able to train individuals to go into areas where they can provide support to those folks who need mental health support in the community. So with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Kress.
Sure, thank you so much. So I'm also pinch hitting for our Vice President for Workforce, Steve Partridge, who's actually at a meeting with site selectors right now. So I'm going to talk a little bit about NOVA, but first I want to talk about our workforce and our engagement with business. So one of the things we did during the pandemic was completely redesign our career services function. We created a one-stop shop for business. Sometimes at NOVA, we use the term NOVA-whelmed. We have 6 campuses, more than 80,000 students, more than 3,400 employees. We serve, I think I heard earlier today, more than 60 different high schools. So it can really become overwhelming. And we wanted businesses to find an effective way of partnering with us. So we created a one-stop shop, first of its kind in community colleges, called the Business Engagement Center. And this is a site in which businesses, it's a portal, they can come in, they can indicate their interest in partnering with NOVA, their interest in serving on our advisory groups, their interest in offering their jobs to our students. We also began a guaranteed interview program for individuals who are in our short-term certificate programs, so that they knew at the end not only were those programs directly linked to employment in the community, but someone would be there ready to interview them at the end of that program too. So we're really excited about this opportunity. I want to brag a little bit on NOVA, which I should do as the president, and say that NOVA was recognized by the Harvard Project on Workforce. And if you wonder what a crisis workforce is in, just understand that Harvard is looking at it. But the Harvard Project on Workforce identified NOVA as one of just 5 community colleges across the country that is doing workforce right. Next slide. One of the ways we do that is through labor market intelligence. So we have a very sophisticated office at NOVA that does look at the data and gives us analytics about where programs may be growing, where we should sunset programs, how we can better engage with businesses. We also provide this data often to municipalities and to other community groups to use themselves in identifying where they might want to put a stake in workforce development. So Provost Hagery mentioned EV and hybrid. So we're definitely looking at that because we can see that the jobs will continue to grow in that area. We also are adding, for example, a diesel program because we can see that there's a great need for that. We're partnering with Amazon Web Services on fusion splicing and thinking about how the sort of the future of getting that information across lines that must be repaired occurs. So there's lots of us looking at the future. Next slide. And we prepare, thanks to our labor market information, documents like this that we share with our counselors and we share with local high school counselors. And this is one ladder in information technology. And if you look closely at it, you can see it essentially starts with a certificate or a diploma and moves on to a bachelor's degree and talks to students about what they would earn at each one of those steps, what those career opportunities would be. Understand that because of the role that we play as a public institution responsible to the taxpayers, we don't have workforce programs that don't lead, or that we only have workforce programs that lead directly to employment. But we also know that some jobs pay more than others. We also know that many of the students who come to NOVA are first generation, and they don't know the entire horizon of employment opportunities that are there for them. They might not know anyone who ever worked in cybersecurity. So why would they ever think that could be a pathway for them? So we really really want to put that out in front of students, help them understand that these are jobs not for other people, but for them, and that they're more than just that first job, their entire careers, and the ladder is put in front of them. So you would start, for example, in cyber at about $19 an hour with a certificate or a diploma, but if you get your associates, the jump is sizable. It's going to get you to an average of about $80,000 a year, and understand that these are wages within our region. So folks know exactly what they would make when they stay here in Northern Virginia. And then if you were to go on for a bachelor's degree, you would make even more. You would likely make over $100,000 a year. So putting this in front of a young person who maybe doesn't know anyone who works in this field and can't even imagine what someone might do to earn $100,000 a year is incredibly powerful, especially when you can trace out that entire journey for them. Next slide. And one of the things we do is partner. We partnered with the Northern Virginia Chamber on the Workforce Index. Just a few interesting findings if you want to go to the next slide. That not a big surprise, folks are still having a huge difficulty finding talent, right? So we saw that those difficulties increased year on year. But very interesting to us at NOVA, where we're really focusing on internships and apprenticeships and looking at the skills that are embedded in all these jobs, is that there is still that paper ceiling for many of these jobs of a bachelor's degree. So we're working with employers to help them understand that the skill sets that comprise many of these jobs may not require a bachelor's degree. And so by opening up that aperture, they're really going to see an entire source of talent that was never there before. A source of talent that can begin at NOVA and get a degree where, in case you don't know, a full-time student for a full year at NOVA, if that student even has to pay their tuition, is going to be $5,500 a year. That's all in with fees. Dual enrollment programs are offered free and reduce that even more. The state's investment in G3, which is workforce scholarship, means that at this point about 60% of the students who go into these career pathways pay no tuition whatsoever. So that's incredibly powerful and increases the affordability. Just to take a completely different track, not going directly into workforce, but yesterday at our commencement, our keynote speaker was Dr. Melissa Lucas, who right now is doing her postdoc at the Yale College of Medicine, but began at NOVA as a high school dual enrollment student, moved from that into NOVA, then moved from NOVA onto Virginia Commonwealth. She completed her bachelor's degree in less than 2 years upon transfer, then went on to UVA, and now has been able to move forward. And she told our students that coming to NOVA was the best decision she ever made. It saved her time, it saved her money, and she was able to consider going to graduate school. So that's exactly what we want to do in the community, is open up those horizons. Next slide. You can see some of the businesses that we partner with, but I want to, especially at a time when everyone's talking about student debt, note that of our applied degrees, again, 60% of our students graduated with no student debt whatsoever at all. Next slide. So just a little bit about NOVA coming out of the pandemic. So our enrollment has been stronger than other community colleges in the DMV region, and we're outpacing community colleges nationally in enrollment. What we've seen is about a 4% decrease in our credit enrollment, but that's really only based on what we call full-time equivalent students, not actual headcount students. When you look at headcount students, actual students who are coming to us, not the number of credits that they take, we're actually doing much better. But what's interesting to us, again, looking at that career pathway, is where we're seeing double-digit increases is in our Fast Forward programs. Those are those short-term, 4-month certificate programs that lead directly to employment in the region. On average, someone who engages in that 4-month training program will see their wages increase by about 28%. That's considerable. We also have the strongest credit enrollment in our university transfer programs, especially business and IT, healthcare, and career IT programs. As I mentioned, our recognition by Harvard, and our advanced program with George Mason University, where students are co-enrolled from their first application to advance, has been recognized by the Aspen Institute and was recently highlighted on the PBS NewsHour as one of those transfer programs that actually work. 100% of the credits the students earn will transfer over to Mason. And what that means is that the students who participate in our advanced transfer partnership with Mason will graduate in less than 2 years with their bachelor's degree. Next slide. So our students do reflect the diversity of our community. As you can see, we don't actually have a majority student population, and we're proud and honored to serve the diversity of our community. We think it adds to the strength of Nova, but I think it also reflects that open door, right? And we want to make sure that that open door always leads to another. Next slide. The other thing that will lead to is graduation. We're excited to say that although, that front door, the students who walk in reflect the diversity of our community, the students who walk across the stage at graduation yesterday reflected that same diversity. So we're not really seeing the achievement gaps and the graduation gaps that some other institutions are seeing, in large part thanks to our amazing faculty and our amazing staff who really put the success of our students at the center of all that they do. Next slide. And then just a couple other highlights. One is that Nova has a very strong IT enrollment. In fact, we are one of the nation's leading community colleges in graduating IT associates holders. We have about 4,600 students in IT, which is by a factor of probably 3 or 4 larger than most university IT colleges. Next slide. And we continually work with business and industry to add new programs. You can see some of them that are directly aligned with right now with industry. And if you want to go to the next one. You can see what we're in development on. We're really looking right now at analytics, at data intelligence, and looking at what we can do in terms of prior learning. We had a wonderful announcement at the Alexandria campus with Google a couple weeks ago about their new credit their career certificates, which we will provide college credits for. So students can take these no-cost or low-cost certificates and earn between 9 and 12 credit hours at Nova. Okay, next slide. And then we are home to the only dedicated medical education campus in the Virginia Community College system. We have about 2,100 students there, 11 healthcare programs plus nursing, and we received funding from the General Assembly a couple of years ago to actually double the size of that campus, and that will be occurring in the next 5 years. Doubling the size, and I know this math doesn't make sense, will allow us to triple the size of our nursing program. So we're very excited about that because we know the huge demand at VHC and others. I want to give a shout out to VHC for being a great partner with us at our medical education campus. Next slide. And then university transfer is where most of our students reside. Our largest transfer partner, no surprise, is George Mason University. We'll transfer actually close to 3,500 students over to Mason this year, but we also have very strong transfer partnerships across all of the public universities in the Commonwealth. Our largest transfer partner outside of Mason will be a tier of Virginia Commonwealth University, Virginia Tech, James Madison. We transfer in an average year about 600 students to UVA. We also have wonderful relationships with George Washington University around tuition discounts for our students that makes going to a private institution like George Washington very affordable. We have the same thing with Marymount University as well. Marymount has been an extraordinary partner for us. Next slide. And there you go. So I would just say, Nova is very large. There are 23 Virginia community colleges. We comprise fully a third of all enrollment in community colleges in Virginia, even though there are 22 other institutions. We had an extraordinary celebration yesterday. We graduated more than 4,000 students. Thank goodness not all of them chose to walk at commencement. But we did have close to 2,000 students who walked 2 ceremonies. We can't even have just one ceremony. So proud, so excited, so many tears walking across the stage. Again, thanks to our outstanding faculty and staff, our wonderful campus provosts and leadership, and most of all, our incredible board. So we're happy to take any questions.
My goodness, thank you, Doctors Kress and Haggerty and Ms. Chung. Thank you so much for bringing us some good news. It's always welcome to hear about Nova's great work and growth and being able to not only respond to this current changing environment, but to seemingly thrive in it. So, colleagues, questions? Mr. DeFerranti.
I'll try and be super brief. Congratulations, Dr. Chung. I remember we had a lot of phone calls. I'm thrilled you're vice chair of the board, and thank you for all your leadership on the board, in addition to in our community through the Career Center in Arlington Tech. Thank you, President Kress. We haven't had a chance to, and Provost Haggerty, we haven't had a chance to talk or meet in depth. You are in the American dream business, and super grateful. And I'll punt beyond that. There's a simple phrase, which is, I was thrilled to get on a call with some of our Latino leaders and help with enrollment. I'll hope to follow up with an appropriate email to one of the four of you with a simple question: how can I help more?
Thank you. Mr. Karantonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Dr. Kress, for your leadership and for bringing Nova so far. I mean, we're a big region, so we have also a big responsibility to provide, a third or more than the community college capacity of the Commonwealth. I have one question. I mean, out of the cascade of data that you gave us, all extremely positive and forward-thinking and forward-looking. So there was, on slide 11, there was something about, help me understand, employers not being comfortable in employing students that come out of apprenticeship programs. Is that correct? Only 15% want to do that.
Yeah, it's puzzling, right? So it's a great question. We're a partner in the Greater Washington Apprentice Network with the Northern Virginia Chamber and several of the other chambers and large employers. And one of the challenges that we've identified is not so much that employers are concerned about apprenticeships, but they don't know enough about them, and they also often don't have what they think is the bandwidth to manage an apprentice program. So Nova can actually be the sponsor for an apprentice program, which lifts that burden off of an employer and moves it over to our institution, because we've got an expertise in that area, which is, for example, if you look at alarm.com up there, it's a smaller employer, but we've been able to work an apprenticeship program with alarm.com, which is an IT employer. So one of the things we continue to do is to find ways to, one, help folks understand that there isn't a one-size-fits-all for apprenticeships. Also, maybe move them from a mindset where apprenticeships are just something for advanced manufacturing or for manufacturing. We actually pioneered the tech apprenticeship with Amazon Web Services. And then we try to take the lift off of those employers. I think as low as that figure is, that 15%, I think it is, probably if you had gone back 5 years, it would have been 1% who would have looked at apprenticeships. It's a continual uphill battle, and we work right alongside.
I mean, what I'm after is that there is a glaring asymmetry between the enormous effort that we make in, tailoring all these programs, providing all these channels, the transfer possibilities, the additional credits, the credits in APS, et cetera. And then we have employers who actually clamor that all the time that they don't get, at starter skill levels, sufficient workforce. And this is specifically for IT, right? Not exclusively. I mean, the medical sector is another one. And then, for some reason, they are blocked, or they block themselves from employing their next employees.
Yeah. As I said, it is puzzling. I've made, I think the first trip that I made to look at the German dual system was in maybe 2011 as part of the U.S. Department of Education, which really at that point was trying to seriously promote apprenticeships. Went to look at the Swiss system, very different system, and that would have been in 2019. different administrations still trying to promote apprenticeships at the federal level. So, one thing we always ask is for folks who've had a successful experience with apprenticeships to really share that message. And I would encourage anyone who's listening to this or anyone who wants to participate, we can facilitate the connection to the Greater Washington Apprentice Network, which really takes a lot of that lift off of the company and helps them hopefully see a stronger workforce and a broader workforce. I do think part of the challenge, we talk about that paper ceiling of the bachelor's degree. I certainly believe in college. I have a lot of degrees, so I'm not going to say folks shouldn't get a bachelor's degree. But sometimes that journey can be difficult for individuals. And some of the data coming out suggests that if you put a bachelor's degree as your automatic threshold for employment, you're potentially cutting out 50% of your workforce. Instead, if you were to look more closely at the skills that are required for that job and partner with NOVA, partner with anyone, and help individuals build that skill set, what you would find is that those employers or those employees are actually stickier. They're more likely to stay with the company that's invested in them. I think the data point is something around 3/4 of those individuals who come through apprenticeships stay with the employer that has invested in them. And that's data that any employer would be delighted with.
Thank you. I'm very interested to figure out what we can do to work better. First of all, as an employer here ourselves, I don't believe that we have so many apprentices. We have interns, but we don't have apprentices. There is a big difference between the two. And the second thing is, I think the Commonwealth begins to invest in that. Even the governor has, expressed explicit interest in this. And I think that we can play a role there. I'm interested to follow up with you on this. Thank you.
Thank you. And to continue that conversation, are you finding, at least I found in other circles, the understanding of what an apprenticeship program is conflated often with interns, and people really don't understand the best models of an additional agency that provides necessary administration and support, and what a company is actually getting is someone who, with an investment far less than recruiting from the amorphous world, that investment can be focused on quickly getting you a level of productivity that would take substantially longer to achieve otherwise and is not guaranteed. So are you finding that that growth up to 15%, that once you're able to get people to really listen and maybe disabuse themselves of some, lack of understanding of what an apprenticeship is, are you finding that people are getting it, or is there still a barrier that you have to overcome?
I think there's still a little bit of a barrier. When you were talking, I was reflecting, I was on a panel once, and one of the employers who was part of the panel said, people ask me if I'm afraid to invest this much in my potential employees, and what happens if they leave. And he said, what I'm afraid of is what happens if I don't invest this in them and they stay. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I thought that was really an incredible way of thinking about it, that really what you're talking about is you're trying to invest in the future of your company. So, we've been partnering with the Northern Virginia Technology Council as well, and NVTC has a real interest in growing tech apprenticeships, not internships, but apprenticeships, really recognizing the inability of many tech companies to grow because of a lack of a very specific employee base. And many of the technologies that they want those folks to learn anyway are proprietary, right, which is perfect for apprenticeship. Mm-hmm. So you would partner with NOVA, there would be our courses, but then in the company, the apprentice would be an employee working, but also learning proprietary technologies that they would need to succeed in that workplace. So I think there's a huge groundswell right now, and you're hearing it, it's a bipartisan effort, I think, at this point. You hear the president saying this, you hear the governor saying this, you hear that there just needs to be a recognition that that four-year degree pathway isn't for everybody. And if we keep pushing folks that way, from the beginning, it may shut out a whole bunch of talent that would benefit from being in the workplace personally as well in terms of economic and social mobility. And I think that's a concern as well around the diversity of the talent pipeline.
Terrific. Thank you. All right. I think that's all the questions that we have for you this evening, but let me just say again, thank you. It's been probably too long since we've had this comprehensive look at where Nova is, and it's just so great to know that your trajectory is strong and that you're really responding to a really difficult climate. So thank you all so much, and we appreciate your time this afternoon.
Thank you, and thank you for your support.
Now I have to move on to prosaic board business and proceed to move a number of appointments to our advisory bodies, as well as an appointment of one of our own. So I'll make the following motion. It will not need a second. Bear with me as I move to appoint to the Arlington Partnership for Children, Youth, and Families, Karen Herling for a term ending May 31st, 2025. To the Commission for the Arts, Alyssa Tope for a term ending May 31st, 2026. To the Community Services Board, that we appoint Daniel Adams, term ending May 31st, 2026. To the Economic Development Commission, that we appoint Joseph Euler IV and Paula Sorrell for terms ending May 31st, 2026. To the Joint Facilities Advisory Commission for terms ending May 31st, 2025, that we reappoint Brian Harner, Claire Noakes, and Stacy Snyder. To the Neighborhood Complete Streets Commission, that we reappoint Steve Wardell for a term ending May 31st, 2026, and that we appoint as an at-large member Margarita Scott Brose for a term ending the same time. And that we appoint to the Northern Virginia Transportation Commission our colleague Takis Karantonis, and designate him as the Virginia Railway Express Operations Board appointee from Arlington for a term that expires December 31st of this year, and that we appoint to the Planning Commission for terms ending May 31st, 2027, Eric Berkey and Tony Striner, and that we reappoint for a term ending May 31st, 2025, Jason Despain to the Sports Commission. All those in favor, or first, any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Hearing no opposition, the ayes have it 5-0, and all of those individuals that I have read are appointed and reappointed, and let me take this opportunity to thank all of them. The ones who are re-upping to continue their service, we are grateful for what you have done and what you are interested in continuing to do. And congratulations to all those who are newly appointed to their respective commissions for the first time. We hope you are fulfilled in that work, and we are grateful that you want to give so much of yourselves to Arlington County. Colleagues, I'd now like to recognize you all for your reports, and to kick us off, Ms. Crystal, please take it away.
Thank you so much. We have a slide to accompany a brief celebration of Child Care Provider Appreciation Day. This is a national effort, and we were approached about participating in it, and I'm so glad to encourage everyone to join us in thanking child care providers. This is, of course, one of the most essential roles in our community, and we know that Arlington's child care providers create safe and caring places for our smallest kids here in Arlington, and they are also a critical point of our workforce, as we were just discussing with our friends from Northern Virginia Community College. And we know that a majority of our providers, both owners of child care centers and in-home daycares, and also the workforce, tend to be women, particularly women of color, often newer American women of color, and many of them, if not most, are small businesses. One way we can say thank you to providers is to support them. And one of the things that I am glad to have the opportunity to spotlight is that Arlington County would love to help our providers advance in their career pathways by seeking their Child Development Associate certificate or credential that allows them to become a lead teacher and advance their careers. We offer a free program for income qualifying Arlington residents to learn how to take those exams, attend orientation, track their hours, and otherwise advance their careers in this important way. So we encourage folks to visit arlingtonva.us and search earn CDA. We are now accepting applications for the 2023 class. So thank you again to those who are providing such an essential service here in Arlington County.
Terrific. Thank you so much, Ms. Crystal. And it doesn't seem that we have any other board reports unless I'm missing something. Mr. DeFerranti? No, it's already done. Good, okay, excellent. So with that, we are now ready to refresh my memory, Ms. Jacobs. Are we going to convene as the CDA before our closed session or after?
Before.
All right.
I just wanted to double check. You said Mr. Carantonis does not have regional reports?
Regional,
No.
not board reports.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. I was
Yeah, they're
was
different.
missing that page. I apologize. Mr. Carantonis, please proceed.
And I will be brief, Mr. Chair, but very happy to follow up on our resolution to declare this Bike to Work Week and the month of May as the cycling month. If you can put up a couple of slides, maybe. Thank you. It's Bike to Work Day on Friday. This is Bike to Work Week, but especially Bike to Work Friday, the 19th of May, which is in a couple of days. This is celebrated in the region, so if we can move on those. And this is the year we can safely say that we fully bounced back. We're back with more than 100 pit stops this year. Not quite where we left it at 2019, 119, but we are very, very, very close to that. I'm very happy to see that. I invite every Arlingtonian to really think about biking to work or to any place for what it's worth. Next slide. We have some stats because the Bike to Work week is always, associated with doing surveys and registering people to do, and participants. So there is one stat that particularly annoys me. This is the first line, 18 to 24. It says 2%. That is an unacceptable number, but we know that that a lot more young people in Arlington and across the region bike to work. Also, the other stat that annoys me a little bit is the 65 plus, 8%. I guarantee you that more senior, older adults bike to work, and on purpose I put a photo of two older adults riding the revolutionary device of this quarter of the century, which is the electric bike. For everybody who's listening or will be listening, try it out. You can do that. You can actually do that almost for free because the Capital Bike Share now offers a fleet of amazing electric bikes. This will change your life. Next slide, please. And to demonstrate how it changes your life, prior to Bike to Work Day, 13% of respondents to the survey that we do every year with a registration never commuted by bicycles. And after Bike to Work Day, 23, so almost a quarter of new rider responders started bicycling to work 2.5 days a week. And these are hard data. This is really the truth. That means, yes, once you test it, once you bike to work, you never go back. And that's a amazing insight that I got this year from the data that the Council of Governments had shared with us. So Bike to Work Day, next slide, is Friday, May 19th. Biketowork.com is the website. Register there. We have 10 pit stops all across Arlington, and we will feature educational informative displays from tabling partners, giveaways, coffee, breakfast treats, and you will get one of these fantastic T-shirts to wear and to show your pride that you actually bike to any place, not only to work, and preferably everywhere. 1,500 Arlingtonians have already registered. Our goal is 2,000, and I think this is a very modest goal. We should set our goals higher, but for this year, I would be very happy if we can surpass the 2,000. Thank you, Ms. Jacobs.
Thank you. And I think you can keep the microphone on because
Yes,
you're next
and
with
the
another
next-
regional.
The next topic is not a very happy one. It's actually something that is just a prelude to the county manager's report on the particulars in Arlington. We talk about unhoused individuals. This year on January 25th, Mr. DeFerranti and myself, we participated with county staff and many volunteers in the point-in-time count for this year, which is a count of an actual survey of people who are unhoused at this very evening and night in Arlington. This is a national day, a point-in-count, and the Council of Governments has compiled the numbers for this year, and we can see where the region is as a whole. So Arlington in 2023 counted 2,013 individuals, sheltered and unsheltered, but homeless. And this is a change of 31 more. And as you can see, the entire region registers almost 1,400 more homeless individuals. This is a significant challenge. By any measure. You see some counties that are really concerning in their numbers, like Loudoun County, 122% up, Montgomery County, 54% up, Prince William County, 35% up. I asked City of Alexandria, 27% up. I asked why this happens. There are many reasons for that. There is still not a conclusive understanding of why we had so many more. One significant reason that contributes to these very high numbers is that the aforementioned counties, the counties that had the highest increase, have dedicated way more resources this year to count. So the methodology was way more accurate. So they actually counted better. And that gave us a more accurate image of homelessness in the region. Next slide, please. The household composition, we see a decline in unhoused families, but more single adults being homeless. As you can see here, 2023 compared to 2019, households with adults and children are more than 1,000 households less, but households without children, so independent adults, are more. One number that really hit me was that children represent 61% of all people in homeless families. This was really a very sobering data point. Next slide, please. Chronic homelessness. The news are very good there, especially for us here, minus 76%. So we have, compared to 2022 and to 21 and 20 and 29, that marks a very high number. We have only, quote unquote, 18 individuals that we consider chronic homeless, and that's a good number. The entire region is minus 4%. These are good news in this picture. Next slide, please. The racial disparities continue to be the ones that we always knew, and they continue to be very stark. On the right side, you can see the demographic profile of the region. 25% are Black African Americans, and on the left side you can see the demographic profile of homeless single adults, where 71% of unhoused individuals are Black African Americans. So these disparities continue, and we haven't found still a way to make inroads to improvement there. Next slide, please. The age distribution, as you see, older adults continue to be the biggest cohort here. 2023 was no different than previous years, and so we haven't made any improvement, especially in the approach, in our approach in the cohorts 45 and 55 plus, 45 and up and 55 plus. Next slide. Formerly homeless, formerly homeless, so people who have experienced homelessness versus literally homeless, people who are experiencing, who have been experiencing literally homeless. We see an improvement here. The region has been able to provide either permanent supportive housing or rapid housing options, or other permanent housing to almost 30,000 unhoused individuals versus 9,000 who are literally homeless, so who are basically without these options, and they are, in blunt terms, out on the streets. Next slide. So main takeaways from the aggregate data that you just saw: increases in the number of people experiencing homelessness in all jurisdictions in the region. In the 2023 point to larger systemic impacts out of the end of the COVID era, and this definitely has to do with the end of the protections and the federally funded housing assistance programs. We have seen that here in Arlington. I believe that the county manager will report more on this for what applies to Arlington County. The number of people experiencing homelessness on January 25, which is the point in time count, remains below the total counted prior to the pandemic in 2019, which is a piece of better news. And of course, and this is obvious, more housing and services are needed, and this is the answer to prevent and end homelessness in metropolitan Washington. We still have a lot of work to do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Karantonis. Any questions or comments? Just one for me. Your middle key takeaway here, that the account of literal homeless individuals is below pre-pandemic levels, and that figure is about 9% below pre-pandemic levels. It's very good news. It means that our efforts actually matter and are meaningful. And while anyone who is experiencing literal homelessness, we would want most of all for them to be rapidly housed. The fact that the efforts of the region, Arlington in particular, which we're going to hear from in a minute, do actually result in progress is something to herald, even though, of course, we don't find room to celebrate when people are experiencing such pain. So thank you so much for those reports. We're now ready to move on to the manager. If there are no other colleague regional reports, there's a couple of items for the manager's report.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. 2 items. First, I wanted to start off with what I'm entitling Reflections on Communications and Engagement. Now, it's not very often we take the opportunity to take a step back and check in on some of the things that I have made a personal priority, and I know this board has been intensely interested in, which is how are we doing on communications and engagement with our public? Now, I can't think of a meeting in this room that doesn't go by where people say, well, you know, Arlington County, you think you guys are such great communicators and engagers, but you have failed in the following 10 ways. And so we've had a lot of conversations about perceptions in the community and actually examples where we have not perhaps done a phenomenal job. But I really wanted to take this opportunity to focus on some great things I think that we have done. First off, in the last 5 years, and I know you all had your own personal celebrations to celebrate the 5-year anniversary of the 6-step guide for public engagement on capital projects. And that also, since I've become manager in 2016, one of the first things I did, and there's a lot in the name, we used to have a communications office, now it's Communications and Public Engagement, or CAPE. And we have spent a lot of time trying to come up with ways. It's been talked about for years when we did the community facility study, when the board focused on place back about 10 years ago, about expanding our tools, using a digital strategy, diversifying participation. That is extremely challenging. And so what we've done is we've come up with 4 principles, and you're going to hear a little bit about them today, about building a clear and consistent approach, strengthening our communication throughout the life cycle of a project, diversifying participation, and then let's evaluate and see how we've done on those practices. So we have in the room today a whole bunch of communicators and engagers. So apparently no one in the county is learning anything today because they're all in this room. So I'm going to ask you all to stand up so you can all be recognized. Kurt, do you have your scissors with you? Okay, if you all don't behave, Kurt has a very large scissors with all of you. I'm going to ask all the communications and engagement staff to stand up. And these are the people who've been working really hard. And I'm going to turn it over. I, once again, have made the fatal mistake of giving Bryna a microphone, but I'm going to allow her to start us off with the presentation.
Thanks, Mark. And I'm really excited to be here today with, I think many of you know, but I have Justin Beck from the Communication and Public Engagement Office in the County Manager's Office, Sarah Tracy, who's Acting Director of Public Engagement in the County Manager's Office, Jerry Solomon, who's Acting Director of Communication and Engagement in Parks and Recreation, Erica Moore, who's the Director of Public Engagement and Community Planning and Housing Development, and Ryan Hudson, who's our Director of Communications in the Manager's Office. So we're all going to kind of just share a little bit about the journey. And, you know, before we get into specifics, I think it's really important that our community interacts with government every day in all kinds of ways. Residents, businesses, visitors, and sometimes without even knowing it. Turning on the faucet, putting out trash and recycling, taking a walk in our parks, interacting with our public safety team on fire, police, and emergency management. So ways that we don't even think about it. And then many people interact with their government as they pay taxes or vote or take the decennial census every 10 years. But you know, 94,000 residents are actively using their library card. And approximately 35,000 people have signed up for recreation classes just this year. Over 40,000 residents are receiving disability, aging, behavioral health, dental, and employment services. We serve a lot of people and a lot of interaction with government and engagement. And our economic development team engages with thousands of businesses every year. So while fewer number of stakeholders come into the boardroom or to Open Door Monday to testify and engage directly with the county board, last year, in fiscal year 22, we had over 30,000 collective participants who provided feedback on specific projects, plans, programs, and policies during structured county engagements. And over 46,000 people used the Report a Problem app to help crowdsource specific challenges in that same time, interacting with our government and engaging. So we see our role as communicators and engagers to work with you, the county board, the county manager and staff, and the community to make it easier for our residents and members of our community to understand and access government information and services, build our internal capacity, ensure residents and businesses know how and when to engage in government processes, and more importantly, feel welcome when they do. So I'm going to turn it over to Sarah to share a few notes.
Great, thank you, Bryna. So over the last 6 years, a key goal has been to focus on building consistency in our engagement practices. And while we don't always get it right, we do believe we have strengthened our coordination across government departments. And as you know, in 2018, we created the 6-step guide for community engagement on capital projects, which brings consistency across departments as we design our engagements and reinforces the importance of aligning the right tools with the levels of engagement, which are communicate, consult, involve, and collaborate. So we think it's important here to reiterate the key steps that are essential for determining the level of engagement for a project. So first, we need to understand the context of the project or the initiative. And we also need to conduct stakeholder mapping and identify who benefits, who is burdened, and also who is missing. We then align levels of engagement with a level of impact and design a communications plan that aligns with the level of engagement. And here we aim for intentional outreach to segments of our community who might be unaware and least connected. And we also aim to conduct comprehensive analysis of the feedback gathered to help inform decision makers across all perspectives, and then post that feedback so everyone can see it. The last step is our after action. And this is an important step in determining where we did well and what we can do better, an element that was suggested by community leader Carrie Johnson. And I'm going to turn it over to Erica Moore to talk about some examples.
Thank you, Sarah, and thank you, board members. As you know, we pursue thousands of projects, plans, and policies each year, and so not all engagement can be created equal. The collaborate level is for those big ideas, big challenges that government cannot solve alone. We have several examples of us working with residents where we've collaborated over the past several years, including Destination 2027, which was an effort that identified that there is a decade of difference for how long people might live based on their zip code, and that offered us incredible insights for the race and equity work that we're currently doing. We also worked together with the community on the Community Energy Plan, the Open Spaces Master Plan. There was the Child Care, Food Security, and Marcus Alert initiatives. There was the Police Practices Group, which resulted in recommendations for the establishment of the Community Oversight Board. And let's not forget our logo committee, or the more than 50 community partners that hosted dialogues on race and equity. We also worked with the Complete Count Committee, which was a group of dedicated community leaders and hundreds of organizational partners that helped us have more than 99% of Arlington households counted in the 2020 census. And then, of course, there was the Complete Vaccination Committee, if you'll go back to a couple of years, where a whole of community effort was undertaken to ensure that all Arlingtonians knew about the COVID-19 vaccine and how they could get vaccinated. We've also been making changes to our site plan review process to ensure it is collaborative. Key stakeholders from the community are appointed to every site plan review committee, or SPRC, and they roll up their sleeves together with planning commissioners to really delve into the very detailed aspects of the proposal in front of them. But the SPRC process also includes an opportunity for the general public to weigh in and provide feedback to that committee. CPHD planners and communication and engagement staff work closely together to ensure that the surrounding community is aware of the plan review and how they can provide input and participate in the process. The 6-step guide to engagement has also helped us shift our practices. For example, our resurfacing for Complete Streets program now involves community feedback much earlier in the design process and provides much more time between community engagement and project implementation. And together, we hosted the Big Ideas Roundtables in 2018, where hundreds of residents came together and identified a need to protect Arlington's diversity as we grow and to expand efforts for inclusive housing. Now I'm going to turn it over to Jerry, who is going to tell you a little bit about how we've been building our capacity.
All right. Thank you, Erica. As we know, good communications and engagement requires support in many ways. Our action plan also called for building capacity, both internally and externally. Capacity building requires that we strengthen our tools, knowledge, and skills. We have trained hundreds of staff, engineers, planners, communicators, engagers, and program staff included, on how to use the 6-step guide, and created internal resources like our AC Commons public engagement page, which provides staff with resources that help with engagement planning, outreach, analysis, and more. This past year, we appreciated having Jen Sosin, an Arlington resident with a background in research design, conducting training on designing good questions and survey methodology. We've also hosted sessions on stakeholder mapping, naming and framing very difficult issues, using plain language, and other key topics. And we have procured new tools for online engagement and also strengthened our ability to host virtual meetings. We launched the Arlington Engagement Brigade, which we're very excited about. This is a dedicated group of neighborhood college graduates who work side by side with us to engage community members. We've also partnered with the Civic Federation over the past several years to host a series of roundtables and workshops with Civic Association presidents, leading to capacity building workshops on building membership, enhancing our outreach to renters, hosting neighborhood events, and more. We've also created a new toolkit for Civic Association presidents, a toolkit for new Civic Association presidents, which has come in very handy as we help them navigate our government resources. I'm going to hand it over to Ryan, to share a bit about how we are strengthening communications and building trust.
Great, thank you very much, Jerry. So, like Jerry said, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we're strengthening our communications. We obviously still have opportunities there where we can make it even better within our community. But I wanted to highlight some of the ways that we've made it easier for everyone to find information. So as it is right now, we average about 400,000 visits and about 1.5 million page views a month to the county's website, which was recently updated and now offers access to 17 different languages. On that webpage, there's a special Engage Arlington website that lists active engagements from across government, streamlined all in one place, plus links to other ways to get involved in our community. And now that same information goes out weekly to over 130,000 subscribers to our Inside Arlington newsletter, along with other current events and things happening around the county. Now, of course, during the COVID-19 pandemic, we continuously kept residents updated on ever-changing public health protocols and information on testing and vaccines, and we shared ways that anyone could access food, rent support, and other emergency services. And over the past several years, we've built out the Open Data Portal, which provides public access to government data, and we post FOIA responses on the public website as well. Now, we've created a guide to the budget that includes highlights of an overwhelming 1,000-page document. And in the last CIP, we included a map of projects for the first 2 years. And speaking of maps, the My Project app is available so residents can get updates on public projects and plans in their neighborhood. And in Crystal City specifically, where there are over 50 active projects, we created a special, unique map just for that area. And while, of course, it's not new, our neighborhood college is another amazing example of where people can come and learn about how their government works right here in Arlington. And as we continue to strengthen our communication efforts, we are aiming to use more plain language while also developing infographics and videos to help distill information. But of course, the work is never done. We're actively working on revising and updating our neighborhood and project pages on our website to make it even easier to find nearby places and information. And with that, I want to turn it over to Justin, who's going to speak a bit about expanding and diversifying participation in some of our projects.
So much. My microphone's not working. There we go. Now it's working. Thank you so much, Ryan, and thank you, board members. Like he said, I'm going to be talking about our goal, and it was mentioned by Mark as well, as possibly one of the most challenging, of expanding and diversifying participation. This is one area which almost every one of the colleagues that we have across each department struggles with. This is an area where each one of them at every level of government is trying to do better. We're proud of the work that we're doing, and we continue to expand our connections to find these voices in our community. Our demographers and our racial equity team have established a demographic and a census data dashboard that allows us to have a data-driven approach and an intentional approach to our outreach and our engagement opportunities. We also created a multifamily building map so that we and others in the community can begin to make connections with over 71% of our of our residents. Before the pandemic, we, meaning the county board members, members of the county manager's executive leadership team, staff, had the chance to talk with over 400 of our residents of lower income through a series of forums hosted by the Community Progress Network on topics ranging from public safety to housing to transportation. These engagements provided amazing and profound insights, which we believe will be instrumental in helping us shape our engagement practices as we move forward. Following the Community Progress Network's forums and the county board's engagement with the United Way and collaboration with leaders from communities of color, supported by Katie's Unum Fellowship, we recently established internal guidance on equitable engagement, which provides additional goals for staff to help and expand and diversify our participation with people of color, people with limited English proficiency, recent immigrants, people with disabilities, the LGBTQIA+ community, and other adults. During the census and during the pandemic, we actually strengthened our relationships with trusted community partners to reach individuals who often do not interact with their government. And we recently launched Community Advancing Resilience and Readiness Together, or CART, which is another coalition of dedicated resident volunteers, similar to the Engagement Brigade, which just a few weeks ago reached over 450 residents and businesses in one day to share information about how we prepare if a flood or other natural disaster were to occur in our community. We're pleased that we are seeing greater numbers in our engagements and from more diverse audiences. For example, during the fiscal year 2019 budget engagement, there were less than 300 total participants. In fiscal year 2024, we had over 2,400 people weigh in during the budget process, including 700 through on-the-ground interactions in our community, and almost 200 people answered our feedback form in Spanish. I'm now going to take this opportunity to turn it back over to Jerry as she talks about how we've enhanced our policies to advance our engagement process. Thank you.
Thank you, Justin. So that brings us to our final objective in the action plan, evaluating and enhancing policies to advance good community engagement practice. One of the first things that the county manager did in his role is launch an open data portal to make it easier to access primary data sets. FOIA responses are now posted on the public website. As noted, we're using the 6-step guide and a consistent set of strategies and approaches for like projects. This means that we are establishing a review process for engagements across departments, and we've integrated a public engagement section in the board reports. We have coordinated an editorial system across our departments. We have issued internal customer service policies for staff to acknowledge receipt of an email or a call within 1 business day. In 2020, the county manager appointed the first chief race and equity officer, and in 2021, the Arlington Police Department established the Community Engagement Division. And as a result of lessons learned during COVID, we have issued an ongoing policy to provide an opportunity for stakeholders to offer virtual public comment at county board and commission meetings, as you all know. But with all of this, we know that we still have work to do. One area included in our original action plan focuses on applying a consistent engagement policy or process to policy development and adoption. And we hope that we can work with all of you on the county board on this important focus, as well as building consistency across our commissions and advisory boards. I'm going to give it back to Bryna to give us some closing remarks.
So we've covered a lot of ground, but I think the bottom line is we're committed to continuous improvement and strengthening our practices, being as transparent as possible, and taking what we've learned in the engagement process and sharing the information with decision makers, county board members, and the public. In order to increase and diversify participation, we're going to continue to help all of our residents access opportunities to interact with our government. And we appreciate our relationships with community leaders who have offered trusted voices and help expand our connections. Ryan mentioned the work we're doing to improve our website and to improve access to information. We are committed to updating our action plan. We've covered and actually accomplished a lot in the last six years. We've leave you with one timeline slide. You know, we opted not to do a series of slides, but these are points along the way that have changed and integrated the culture of communication engagement, not just with our communicators and engagement professionals, but also with our planners, with our engineers, with our professional staff, with our program staff. It's everyone's job to embrace and really commit to ongoing coordination, communication, and engagement with our community. And I think we've shown today that this is a journey. We continue to look at that. So over the next year, we're gonna host a series of forums with renters, this, 61%, 71% living in multifamily buildings, but also recommit to engaging with our civic association presidents and with nonprofit leaders and other community leaders. I want to thank those members of the community that continue to engage on us with a regular basis, but also to encourage others to share their voice and their perspectives. Together, we are stronger. I want to thank staff who's steadfast in their commitment to strengthening our efforts, and I want to thank the county board and the county manager for your leadership, your support, and the resources to make this work happen. So thank you, and together we will continue this journey. So thanks, everyone. Appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you. Very robust, and it's good to hear you all together. Any questions or comments? I've got a couple while you all get your lights on. So I am thrilled at how far we've come in the last 6-7 years. The professionalism of how we engage, the array of offerings, the just incredible willingness to not only be everywhere where engagement could be of value, but to generate the opportunities to connect and engage our public have really, really, really been appreciated. Full stop. There's no but coming. As we look forward to the future, there are a couple of just notes that I bring up as a challenge to the work that we do in engagement. And I don't know how we fix it or if it's fixable, but there are different views of what engagement should be or what engagement is in our community. And, one risk are those who view government as sort of a partner in a transactional relationship, who believe that they have earned or have the ability to make the decisions about what government does for them. And so that's the way they engage with us. And when the answer is no, or not now, or not in that way, there is resistance. And I don't know how we fix that challenge, but I identify it as an increasing and growing risk among the ways in which people engage with us, those who view it solely through the transactional lens. And then I don't know how you deal with this notion of the many people who don't engage, despite our best efforts. We're still not reaching anywhere near critical mass, or what most people would consider to be a statistically valid assessment of public opinion. That's not the goal. But how do you balance the unknown feelings of many versus those who do engage and who in many ways are demonstrating consensus bias, belief that their judgment reflects common good sense and is shared by all reasonable people, and anyone who disagrees is somehow deficient. As we identify these sort of risks in engagement, I don't come with any answers. I just want to give voice to what I know are challenges that you all face, that we all face. And if we can continue to work towards figuring it out, Arlington County will be all the better for it. But if there's anybody who can figure it out, I know you all can. All right, Ms. Crystal, why don't you start us off?
To pick up exactly where you ended, Mr. Chair, this point about all of this effort has served to bring forward just a taste of the multitude of voices that are in Arlington County. This is a pluralistic community in every sense of the word. And I really appreciated the way, Mr. Chair, you talked about consensus bias. I think Arlington for many years operated under its own consensus bias. We were able to bring together people with perhaps divergent viewpoints, but generally pretty similar perspectives, and call the results consensus. All of this work, I think, has served to open the gates much wider, and that has been much messier. And all of that mess and chaos and noise is, to me, a sign of how much success this coalition of professionals has had. It sometimes makes our jobs harder, and it should, because we're actually being challenged to recognize that that anyone who thinks they've reached a common sense solution to problems that plague a county as diverse and extensive as ours is not listening to enough perspectives. And one of the things that is interesting to me, I appreciated, Mr. Manager, as you teed it up, that we will always hear criticism of the process. I will note that a lot of times the criticism of the process comes down to the board, the decision makers listened to a perspective other than mine. And so I think one of the most important things for us as the board member and for you all as communications professionals is to continue to give Arlingtonians opportunities to hear the perspectives of people other than themselves. That was such the core idea of the Big Ideas Roundtable. We even tried to bring that forward with some of our missing middle outreach last summer and fall, although it was not universally appreciated, I can respect, but this opportunity for people to say, I have heard the voice of my neighbor. I don't agree with it, but it is a voice here in Arlington County that's different from my own. And I think that is possibly the most important way we can move forward. I'm also thinking too, if consensus is not really possible, especially on our most difficult policy issues, then really being able to have this compact with the community to say, what can you expect out of engagement? It's not necessarily the case that you can expect to basically get your way anymore, because there are going to be people who disagree with you and come from different places. But you should be able to expect consistency of the policymaking process. Ms. Solomon's comments, I think we're talking about exactly that. You should expect clarity about when, how, and why we will engage you. And that was one of the fundamental promises of the six-step system. And I think at its best, when we've applied it at its best, that's really been what it reflected. I think people should be able to expect multiple ways of engaging, which were highlighted here, and how that's changing. And I think that people should be able to expect transparency. The process of posting all of those Freedom of Information Act requests is another good example. We've sought to post as much data as possible. That doesn't mean that we're able to answer FOIAs that are actually sort of discovery requests, masquerading as FOIA requests, to people's satisfaction. But it does mean that to the extent we have data, we will give it to the community in the same time that we have it, because we know that this is a community that we should form its own conclusions. And then finally, I would just say, I think for us on the board, it matters that we show our work. It matters that we be able to point to the results of all of this engagement that our dedicated staff have done, to be able to understand and help the community understand how their feedback has shaped the way we make decisions. That is a roundabout way of saying I appreciate this work so much. I think about the journey this county has been on since, Mr. Dorsey and I joined 8 years ago. And that transition, exactly as the manager talked about, from communications and all of the kind of pushing out and information sharing that signifies, to engagement and engaging this full, again, pluralistic community as we make our way through the messy process of trying to govern in a place where everyone will not always agree. So thank you so much. I really appreciate the work here.
Thank you, Ms. Crystal. And we'll move next to Mr. Karantonis and then finish up with Mr. DeFerranti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In similar tones, and I really thank you for that. I have to tell you, there was one only piece of paper that I inherited from my predecessor, Mr. Gottschall. That was this. And he told me, he was in the hospital, by the way. He told me, make sure that you really understand that. And it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek, because he thought that this is nicely presented, but it was not very clear to him at this point how it will propagate. So we had a conversation on this, and it was about how you change gears on scale. It's an easy thing, relatively easy. It's conventional, and we shouldn't say easy. It's conventional to deal with 300, 600,000, 2,000 people. It's a completely different story to deal and to try to serve 40,000 or 50,000 or 60,000, 238,000. And I believe that what I read through your presentations and the reading of this play today is we are trying to learn the lessons that will enable us to gear up. The death of consensus bias is the moment when communication actually becomes interactive with a significant bigger number of people than we have been ever experiencing before. It is canceling, and at the same time it creates other challenges. Like, for example, how do I make sure that these micro communities, my small, mosaic of communities gets relevant information that triggers their attention, also responds to what we know from data and from analysis and from reading this community carefully, that they should be or would be interested in. I think that through the processes of the last couple of years, as long as I've been here, I see a continuous pathway of reading the community better. If there is one thing that I want to congratulate you, is that you made an extra effort to sit down and actually be the first to listen, to figure out who is saying what, why, and who is the audience, and how this circles back into the setting of a culture of issues. Whether this is housing or this is gun control or these are a ton of how you said, thousands of points of interest, yes. So I am really very interested, at the same time grateful, interested to see where this gets us back. The fact that we have CAPE, and that CAPE is a collaborative effort of many different minds that read in different ways this community, is to me just an intellectual delight to see. And I'm ready to see what comes next. This will still remain pinned in front of my desk. So.
Excellent. Mr. DeFerranti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Over the last 24 hours, I have relived how much energy I feel it takes to do the engagement and communications. I listened in on a CCPTA meeting last night where I was challenged when I was not clear enough on one answer. And it was a reminder of how much energy it takes to engage fully and properly. And then this morning, I'm sure each of you, all of us have probably had this, when we're trying to put together a written communications piece, and we sit for 2 hours, realize we have not had a drink or stood up, and we're just still working. And so that's a way of saying thank you so much, because it is not easy to do what you do. Three thoughts. I could use maybe a conversation and to continue to learn on the efforts to expand and diversify how we're engaging, just because I'm sort of thinking of the actual work, and then but there's expertise that you have that I could probably use just a conversation to keep learning from you. I don't know that we have, and it's fraught because the Arlington way is perfect in some eyes and fatally flawed in others. But I don't know that we've figured out all pieces of the county commissions and advisory groups. And that doesn't mean it's easy to figure out, but I do wonder if there's some additional thinking and learning that I could do there. And then last, maybe there is good scholarship or thinking out there on how, and we have all sort of brainstormed out loud about how virtual engagement has changed the way we do things. Probably I could, if there's that right 10-page or 6-page article that you have read or thought about on this topic, or if there's a brainstorm that's worthwhile as a team, that's something that I know I could benefit from. Sometimes when you're doing trying to do some communications, you don't think about it, and a later article can consolidate your learning. And I'll just close by saying I'm thrilled that you're considering updating the strategic plan. I know there's a lot of work there. I also feel as though, in a different way, our communications and engagement efforts are sort of also suffering or working within the hangover of COVID. And I just want to hope that you can get, as much ATP, as much energy as you can possibly have to continue the work and revitalize and sort of think to the next phase, because it's been, our whole community is there, but I think the communications team and you as a group, whatever I could do to, give you energy and thank you is what I ought to do. So thanks.
Thank you. All right, team. Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.
So, Mr. Chair, one more item. I know we still have a few things to get through, but I'm going to ask Nicole Dula to come on up, and she's joined by, well, Nicole, you all know, is our Housing Assistance Bureau Director, and she is the co-chair of the Continuum of Care Committee. She's joined by Ayanna Bellamy, who's our Path Forward Director of State and Federal Housing, and the Executive Committee Chair of COC, and Lindley Beckbridge, who's with Doorways, Kathy Paul from Arlington Thrive. I'm sure they'll all have an opportunity to introduce themselves, and they're going to focus a little bit on what Mr. Carantonis started talk about, which is the point-in-time data, and a little bit about what we're doing in our efforts on homelessness. So I think I'm going to turn it over to you, Nicole. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, County Manager Schwartz, and good evening, County Board members. My name is Nicole Dula. As previously announced, I'm the Director of Housing Assistance Bureau at the Department of Human Services, Economic Independence Division. I am joined today by some true homeless service warriors. These are representatives from Arlington County's Continuum of Care. I'll start with recognition of Ayanna Bellamy, who is with Path Forward, operators of our Homeless Services Center. Lindley switched orders, it's okay. Kathy Paul from Arlington Thrive, all things eviction prevention, and a thought partner in our emergency assistance. And then Lindley Beckbridge from Doorways, who's the Director of Communications and Advocacy. Doorways runs our family shelter as well as domestic violence services throughout Arlington County. And a person who keeps us all together, this is Trina Van. This is our lead coordinator of our Continuum of Plan, Continuum of Care, and she is actively working on our next strategic plan, so we'll have more of that to come. But together we collectively represent a federally recognized planning body that coordinates housing, services, and funding for homeless families and individuals throughout the county. We're going to provide for you today an overview of our year-ending 2022 annual report highlights. This will include sort of our homeless services strategies, as well as our efforts to end homelessness. We also would touch on our 2023 point-in-time efforts that was just released last week. So thank you, Board Member Carantonis, for that highlight. Hopefully we'll answer some of those pointed questions that you raised earlier in terms of our recommendations for how the county should look ahead. And so without further ado, I will turn it over to our Continuum of Care Executive Committee Chair, Ayanna Bellamy.
Hello, thank you for having us today. The Continuum of Care, or COC, as Nicole mentioned a little bit ago, is a collaboration between the community nonprofits, people with lived experience, and public programs or services that are working to implement the strategies outlined in our strategic plan and to meet the federal and state requirements, such as operating the centralized access system, which we call CAS, which is located at DHS, the Homeless Management Information System, HMIS, the annual point-in-time count, and the collaborative annual funding opportunities, just as some examples. Okay, so this slide is just an overview of how some of our folks connect to the COC's resources. As people are connected to the centralized access system, which we call CAS, the staff at DHS work with those households to either divert or prevent their episode of homelessness. They do this by working very quickly, identifying and offering access to any safe alternatives to shelter. That could be either connecting them to other community resources, family supports if they're able to stay with family, or by providing flexible financial assistance, including helping to avoid evictions. For those who are already sleeping outside, they're literally homeless, DHS Treatment on Wheels and Path Forward Street outreach teams are deployed throughout the community, and they engage with those folks to provide those basic immediate needs that they may be requiring. Or they'll connect them to services such as behavioral health treatment, the day program, which is located at HSC, and the ultimate goals is to bring those folks inside. For those whose homelessness can't be prevented, the CAS will assist those with referrals to any area shelters or other programs like rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, which quickly works with assisting folks in attaining and sustaining their permanent housing. These interventions all utilize the known best practices such as Housing First and trauma-informed care, which center people's experiences and strengths as we address any challenges or barriers and develop plans to stabilize while in housing for the long term. So during our fiscal year 22, we had 688 people that were served by our centralized access system, which assisted with 181 single adults and 24 families in accessing shelter, with the exception of 2 people who denied shelter. During that same period, we had 305 people who were served across Arlington shelters. And this number does not include Doorway Safe House. The strategies we use across the COC are effective. In an average of about 3 months in shelter, 59% of folks left to permanent housing. 94% of the RRH, the rapid rehousing clients, had permanent housing after assistance ended. And 95% of PSH participants maintained or left for new permanent housing options. And across the entire COC, to include unsheltered clients engaged by outreach teams, domestic violence programs, shelter, rapid rehousing, and permanent supportive housing, 1,070 people were served in fiscal year 2022. The greater majority are single adults, about 744 people were served. Additionally, the COC served 105 families, representing 326 people in those households. The COC is also actively working to support and address homelessness among veterans, transition-age youth, and those experiencing chronic homelessness, who are also represented in the single adult and family household that I previously mentioned. And I'll pass it over to Lindley.
All right, thank you. So our annual report highlights the success of the approaches that Ayanna was discussing, and also some of the challenges that we continue to face in our community. So some of those in particular, some of the successes really come together to show that more than 9 out of 10 people who are leaving our COC housing programs are doing so in permanent housing. So that is really a tremendous testament to the work of our staff and COC members. Some of the challenges that we continue to see, as we saw previewed in the PIT count, disproportionate impact on Black and African American residents. That continues to be a big challenge that we are working to address in building equity in our community. Our undocumented residents are also seeing significant barriers that we are working to address with targeted supports for those folks. We are finding that we need more safe housing in our community. In our domestic violence safe house at Doorways, from fiscal year 2018 to 2022, we saw an 84% increase in utilization of safe house. And what that was for 2022, the total number of people, survivors and their families, was 107. As of right now, in fiscal year 2023, we're already at 101. So we anticipate that that trend will continue for yet another year as it did before, during, and after COVID. And finally, we live in a very expensive place, and we really need employment that pays folks a livable wage and childcare that is both affordable and accessible. Those are key pieces, especially for families who are experiencing homelessness or trying to stabilize in housing after being in shelter. Those are some of the key pieces that they need in order to do so. So earlier, Mr. Karantonis presented some of the COG numbers, and we'll take a little bit closer look here at Arlington specific numbers. First, taking a step back and looking at the larger picture of what we've achieved over the last decade or so. And really since 2013, we have seen a 55.5% reduction in homelessness. So that should not go unnoted. That has really been the result of significant amount of work by our COC members. And this increase that we saw from 2022 to 2023, that 17% increase, while it is evidence of a return to pre-pandemic levels of need, now that the pandemic era funding has come to an end and extra resources, the flip side of that is that it really showed us what that increase of resources and supports and some of the particular policies could achieve for some folks. So there were some positive lessons learned out of that too, some good things to come out of the pandemic, if you will. And as you saw earlier, all 9 of the COCs participating in the Metropolitan Coalition of Government Homeless Services Committee also experienced an increase. So fortunately and unfortunately, we are not alone in this trend. This is something that we are experiencing across the region. So we're not an exception, but you know, it's a challenge that communities all around are facing at this time. And finally, to look a little closer beyond the COG data for the region, drilling down more specifically on Arlington. I know the font is little. So the lighter blue color is the Arlington population, general. The yellowish color is the 2022 pit count, and then the darker blue color is the 2023 pit count. So what you can see here is an increase from 22 to 23 in the proportion of Black and African American folks experiencing homelessness. Same time, a decrease in white folks experiencing homelessness in that same time. So really, the racial disparities that we experience in Arlington are not only more stark than the COG all told report of all of our regions combined, but it is also you know, a complicated challenge to address among multiple different groups, particularly among our Black and African American residents. And I also want to highlight that while a smaller segment of the population, people identifying with multiple races are overrepresented in the 2023 pit count relative to the number of the general population that they comprise overall. So as we're working to center racial equity, these are the types of things that we look at really carefully. You know, we could just look at what our trends in homelessness is overall with totals, but that wouldn't tell this full, very important story of the continued impact of systemic racism that we need to work to address within our COC as well. So this disaggregated data is a tip of the iceberg in terms of what we look at, in terms of all the numbers that we are able to see and make really informed choices about our strategies.
Good evening, board members, and thanks for having us today. I'm just going to speak for a couple of minutes about the trends and challenges that we've been seeing that Lindley touched on, and then some of the strategies that the COC is working on. So as Lindley mentioned, with homelessness rates returning to just about pre-pandemic levels, because of, the reduction in some of the funding and supports that were available during the pandemic, the COC is really needing to kind of pivot as both partners and clients navigate the immediate impacts of the end of the COVID area resources and the long-term impacts. Some of those impacts are that evictions have increased. Recently, part of the return to the pre-pandemic level of support is the resources available through the Community Assistance Bureau for eviction prevention are now limited per family, or per individual. And so clients are having to navigate that. So at Arlington Thrive, we've been working really closely in partnership with DHS to make sure that, we can support as many people as possible to stay in their homes. And then as far as solutions, targeted solutions. Next slide, thank you. Some of the other things that the COC has been working on with some of its committees, particularly the Strategic Initiatives Subcommittee, are efforts to increase access to affordable childcare that works for families who are looking to work or who are working, who are looking for employment or working, as well as increasing pathways to job opportunities that provide livable wages. These two areas are really foundational to long-term and stable housing. Some of the things that are being done on the childcare side are examining and advocating for affordable and accessible childcare options so parents are able to seek employment. Also working with childcare providers to increase the supply of affordable childcare slots. Arlington Thrive does have a small childcare program, which was funded by the county to help work with providers to help them to become subsidy vendors and offer childcare slots to lower income families using the subsidy. The childcare coordinator who's part of this program is also working with families, helping them to kind of navigate the system and get through the subsidy application process and then find childcare that meets their needs, is accessible to them, et cetera. On the employment side, the Strategic Initiatives Committee is working on increasing employment opportunities for low-income families. Some of the ways that they're doing this is by deepening partnerships with the Arlington Employment Center and the Workforce Development Council. And some of the steps that they are working on are improving communication on employment opportunities kind of across the county and creating an accessible system for providers to seek information to link individuals with employment opportunities. Also exploring funds or grants to create stipends for employees, which would eliminate reliance on employers, and trying to foster greater relations with employers and to incentivize them to make sure that they are really looking to, the full spectrum of the Arlington community for their workforce. And I was really excited to hear about some of the initiatives at Northern Virginia Community College. So I was taking a lot of notes during that presentation.
So we hope to come back in the very near future to present on our strategic planning work of the COC that is currently underway. And we plan to highlight and center racial equity and the voices of people with lived experience of homelessness in our efforts for the next 4 years. We're very eager to share our learnings about what has been working well and where we need to address those critical gaps that will help us to achieve our collective goal of ending homelessness for all. And I just want to thank you all for this opportunity to present our last fiscal year's findings, and for your ongoing support, which without you guys, we could not effectively support the most vulnerable neighbors in our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for just really expounding upon a body of work that is both highly professionally skilled, which we appreciate, but clearly is also girded by a significant amount of compassion towards clients who are experiencing homelessness. And, I appreciate all the materials and the slideshow. I will just say one of the things that we are thinking about as a community, and I know several board members are getting into the details on this, and we've supported a pilot program to this effect, is another COC that might be able to help, and that is the continuum of cash in the form of guaranteed incomes. You like that, huh? All right. All right. But seriously, as you talked about centering a lot of the strategic planning work on the lived experiences of individuals, I'm going to presume that one of the things that you will find are significant barriers in a country where, without stable employment and a steady income, one finds it extremely difficult, particularly if they don't have other resources, family connections, wealth and equity from elsewhere. And in a country that accepts that full employment is going to necessarily mean some people do not have a job, and that doesn't even really count people who don't fit a fairly wonky criteria of who's actually seeking work, there are always going to be people who are going to be left in this situation unless there is a barrier-free backstop to support them. And so while I fully applaud all the work and look forward to the findings that come from it, I think we probably do ourselves a disservice if we don't recognize that one of the solutions is simply the provision of a cash backstop for people who are most in need. All right, I'm getting off my soapbox. I'm going to turn it over to Mr. DeFerranti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief because I know there's additional work, but I know each of you, perhaps not Ms. Paul quite as well, but each of you I snuck in and attended one of your planning sessions and left sort of speaking, but not so clearly, with the responsibility to invest resources. And so a couple of specifics that may be helpful between, as you read the post stories on Medicaid drawback and SNAP, I'm thinking, if I believe that we should have a safety net like some European countries, what am I doing to stop this federal piece and federal shift? I guess along those lines, on eviction prevention, I wonder if, because I do believe that there's some individuals who can afford to pay, but have gotten into a little bit of a habit of not paying, from talking with a affordable housing nonprofit leader this week. But I wonder if there's a middle way so that we can prevent evictions like 2021, but be mindful that we don't have the resources that we did when the state was there. So that's a thought. Mental health we are working on. There's so much more to do there. I'm also thinking of the things that we couldn't afford in the budget that are investments that I would want to do. And the cost of food is never more relevant than when I went to the RPC shelter the other day. I'm thinking about 30% and below units, and would like more investment, but not vested in knowing exactly how they interplay with slide 5 that you had. And then there's sort of a query in my mind whether a paralegal on our criminal justice system for the public defender's office, we made that decision, but perhaps next year that certainly can be a factor, I think, in the broader homeless. So thanks, Mr. Chair and colleagues, for indulging a little bit.
Thank you. Ms. Crystal.
Speaking of root causes of homelessness, I appreciate the point about lack of income. It seems to me that increasingly nationally there is some research and conversation helping clarify our understanding that while we often think of homelessness as a problem of mental health or domestic violence, that it is at base a problem that there is not enough housing in the United States and in communities like ours. And we often talk about that there's not enough affordable housing or housing that's affordable to people making 30% AMI. But I think we're increasingly learning from homelessness researchers and data scientists that it's actually just a problem of not enough housing, period, right? The metaphor of the musical chairs, that it is always going to be the most fragile in our society that lose when there's not enough housing. And I think increasingly I'm seeing folks point to the fact that sometimes it is the communities with the most generous safety nets that also often have the biggest problems of homelessness, and communities that are, perhaps considerably more conservative or less willing to spend, but have sufficient housing, may have challenges of housing quality, but they don't have challenges of homelessness. It's sort of the truism of why you see massive homelessness problems in San Francisco and very little in conservative parts of West Virginia, for example. I'm interested to know to what extent that is starting to inform the conversation among our continuum of care or with peers, or are we starting to see more of that in the federal government and its guidance to localities? I know you were kind of talking about how we're anchored in federal guidance. Just an effort to connect our regions or this nation's housing shortage period? Or is the conversation really continuing to be about individuals who, ultimately are on the losing end of that game of musical chairs and what it takes to get those individuals connected? It's, I guess, kind of a question about the what's in the ether right now. Is that a conversation that's starting to bubble up, or is it still feeling really kind of focused on the individuals or the kind of correlated problems of homelessness?
I think it's a mixture. I think, yes, there's talk of more affordable housing. I think we're doing a good job with connecting with those developers, with APA, AHC, those folks who, are developing the affordable housing and really trying to figure out kind of where the middle is. But I think it's definitely a good mixture of both conversations happening, yes.
Thank you. And thank you for the insights and the good work holistically. This is not only really compassionate work, but also data-driven work in a way that is really encouraging, and I think sets Arlington up for the most success we can find as we try to strive towards that goal of functional zero.
Thank you. Mr. Karantonis.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really thank you for the data. I will try to be brief and practical. So what I see myself walking close to my neighborhood and looking at families. Number one, food has become extremely expensive, and food is a first tier need. Therefore, families way more than I would ever have expected are actually cutting corners in other places, and housing is one of them. One of the root causes, to circle back to Ms. Crystal's narrative, is that continuously throughout the entire exercise, including the exercise of injecting massive amounts of cash into these families, we haven't accomplished one thing for these families to have the minimum of savings to be able to manage labor and employment precariousness. Even worse, they are on the losing end on the wage adjustment scale. In just one summer, AMI in this region jumped 11 or more %. The interesting part is that this wasn't a tide that lifted all boats. It lifted most boats, but it left way more people underneath. So the standard deviation in statistical terms is now bigger. That means that those people who were before in 40 and 50% AMI and found ways to, collaborative community ways, whether it is overcrowding a home or, sharing food or sharing childcare services, etc. These people were left with less options, actually, not more. So the jump was not beneficial to them. So we have in terms of continuum of care, so that which is a measure of how much gap filling we have to do. how much we have to intervene, how much we have to. So I'm trying to find in the report and I will follow up with you, a measure that tells us this is how much is needed. This is the qualitative parts of that. This is in food. This is in housing. This is because I see that every day. I mean, the eviction wave that we're having right now, it's not only because the rents are very high, it's actually because the wages and the general level percentage of employment among those who make minimum wages or even below that are lower. I mean, they cannot keep up. They cannot meet end. It was very so, and the inability of an entire community at the very moment when one parameter is changing, like for example our eviction prevention levels, or the limit of $7,000 per family per year. The moment that we change one parameter, the entire edifice of financial safety, of housing, and then everything else cascades into disaster. And that calls for a way more expensive and way more difficult and traumatic, because, these people go first through trauma because, they fall literally through the net and they clash down when we are aware of this the moment that we see that happening. So for me, the prevention there, reading what exactly is going on is to me extremely important. And I don't know how we want to accomplish that, how we scan and be aware of what is happening in the field and what the real challenges for these families are. Because, poverty has one thing. Poverty is not visible. Poverty doesn't show. Poverty is occult, so you have to figure that out. You have to find it. You have to make it visible, and this is one of our jobs as well. Thank you for this. More to discuss.
Thank you so much. All right, we appreciate everyone. Thanks for hanging in with us today, and thanks for all the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Schwartz, are there any other items left for your report today?
There are not. Mr. Larrick, please walk carefully.
All right, colleagues, I'd now like to move us to recess this board meeting and convene as the Ballston Quarter Community Development Authority, which we are all members for the annual meeting. So is there a second for that motion? Is there any objection? With a second from Ms. Crystal and no objection, the motion passes. And the board is now, county board is now in recess, and we can now convene, and I call to order this meeting, the annual meeting of the Ballston Quarter Community Development Authority. The first item on our agenda for this annual meeting is an election of officers, and so I will move that the officers who will serve from, is it July 1st, or is it from this moment? I can't remember. Anyway. The officers that I'm going to nominate are serve as Chair Libby Garvey and serve as Vice Chair Takis Karantonis. I'd also like to move to appoint Kendra Jacobs, Clerk of the County Board, as Secretary of the Authority, and Michelle Cowan, Deputy County Manager, as Treasurer of the Authority, and C. Mark Schwartz, Arlington County Manager, as the Assistant Secretary Treasurer of the Authority. Each officer of the authority is designated an authorized authority representative for purposes of the authority's trust indenture. Ms. Crystal has offered the second. Is there any objection? Hearing none, that passes, and those are our officers. Next, we will receive a presentation of the annual audit report and the 2024 special assessment reports. Ms. Cowan, I believe you have the floor.
I do. Thank you so much. So as Chair Dorsey just mentioned, this is the annual meeting of the Ballston Quarter CDA, and I think that you'll find
The agenda we're covering with you today is similar to what we've done in prior years, which is to go through a series of administrative actions that Chair Dorsey just outlined, and then also give you a brief update on the project itself. A quick refresher, the Ballston Quarter CDA was established in 2016 via petition of the property owners. At that point, it was Forest City, in order to allow the county to participate in the CDA in the redevelopment of the old Ballston Common Mall via the issuance of bonds to pay for certain public infrastructure improvements associated with the Ballston Quarter redevelopment project. So to that end, in 2016, the Ballston Quarter CDA issued $59.9 million of revenue bonds in 2 series, which are backed by 65% of incremental tax revenues generated by the project itself. Those specific tax revenue sources are incremental real property taxes, meals taxes, and sales taxes. The 2 series of bonds, there is a Series A series of bonds that was power amount was $44 million, backed by incremental tax revenue only, as I just mentioned. And then the Series B bonds, which were just under $16 million, are backed by that incremental tax revenue after paying the Series A bonds. And then as importantly, because this is one of the actions that you're taking this evening, is the also supported by a special assessment on the property owner, which is now Brookfield, as you know, to support those Series B bonds. That special assessment has been imposed since 2019. Both series of bonds mature in 2046, again, as a reminder. So before I go into the administrative actions for your consideration, just to give a quick and a brief update on the project itself. As we've discussed with you in prior CDA meetings, the project has been delayed in reaching stabilization due to a few factors. 1, construction completion was delayed for a variety of reasons. And then 2, and most significantly, COVID, which impacted retail and restaurant uses, not only at this site, of course, but across the region and the country. As you are generally aware, there has been some leasing activity that Brookfield has followed through on or gotten through. 1 for Grace Community Church, which is occupying around 23,000 square feet at Ballston Quarter. And then the planned new lease for institutional healthcare uses at the site as well. And then there have been several new restaurant leases in the food hall and a few other locations on the project itself. And then finally, the county board improved the entitlement for the new mixed-use development of the Macy's site. While the Macy's site is not part of the special assessment, it is part of the incremental tax revenue that's pledged to the bonds that I just discussed. Again, as I've mentioned, the delay in construction and the impact of COVID, and we've said this over the last few years, have had an impact on tax revenues associated with the project. So revenues are not meeting original projections. We have utilized, or the CDA has utilized, debt service reserve funds in order to pay for debt service. And there is the possibility of a revenue shortfall in the near and medium term. We are monitoring these revenues very closely, as well as the development of the project and working closely with Brookfield on the overall project plan. The other significant item that has happened over the last 6 months or so, last 3 months, is the disposition of some remaining construction funds from the original bond deal of around $1.8 million. Under the trust indenture, this $1.8 million was utilized to do a pro rata redemption of outstanding principal across the bonds, so that has served to lower debt service through 2046. So that's the update on the project and the financials itself. Turning to the administrative items in front of you, we posted and distributed the annual audit report, so the financial statements that lays out revenues and debt service expenses. That audit does have a clean opinion. The second action item in front of you is the acceptance of the annual revenue requirement report, which also then lays out the needed dollar amount for imposition of the special assessment on Brookfield to support those those Series B bonds, and that's in the amount of just over $1.1 million. And so that's an actual special assessment tax bill that's sent to Brookfield for payment. And then finally is the approval of a non-disclosure agreement template for our use in conversations with investors on the project itself and its financials. All of these things, Chair Dorsey, are laid out in a resolution that kind of lists through all those things to be, adopted and accepted by you as the CDA. And so with that, that is our report.
Thank you very much, Ms. Cowan. So seeing no questions, I would like to go ahead and move that the Ballston Quarter Community Development Authority adopt a resolution to handle the 3 items that Ms. Cowan mentioned, to accept the annual audit report presented at this meeting that reflects the audited financial statements as of June 30th, 2022 and 2021, and that we accept the annual revenue requirement memo presented at this meeting, which includes but is not limited to the methodologies for the calculations of the tax increment revenues as described in the memo dated April 27th, otherwise known as Exhibit B, and that the authority requests that the county bill and collect the annual revenue requirement in accordance with the memo and the special assessment agreement. And the third part is that we approve the template, confidentiality, and non-disclosure agreement and authorize, and that's shown on the screen, and authorize the county manager or his designee to execute said agreements subject to approval in form by the county attorney. Seconded by Ms. Crystal. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, we'll move to a vote on those 3 items. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, 4-0. Madam Clerk, is there any other business to come before the authority this evening?
No, there is not.
Okay, without any objection, we are going to adjourn this meeting of the Ballston CDA, and will now reconvene as the Arlington County Board. And now I would like to move that the County Board convene a closed meeting as authorized by Virginia Code Sections 2.2, 3711, A3, and 7 for discussions regarding consideration of the acquisition of real property for a public purpose where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the County Board, and consultation with the county attorney regarding active litigation and probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open meeting would adversely affect the litigating posture of the County Board. Seconded by Mr. DeFerranti. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it, 4-0. We are now in closed session. The board will now reconvene in this room prior to 6:30 p.m. County Board is now back in open session. And I move that the members of the County Board certify that at the just concluded closed session, one, only public business matters lawfully exempted from the open meeting requirements under Chapter 37, Title 2.2 of the Code of Virginia, and two, only such public business matters as were identified in the motion by which the closed meeting was convened were heard, discussed, or considered by the board. Is there a second? Seconded by Ms. Crystal. Will our clerk please call the roll?
Mr. Dorsey?
Yes.
Mr. Carantonis?
Yes.
Mr. DeFerranti? Yes. Ms. Crystal?
Yes.
Thank you. We are now ready to move on to our consent agenda item that was removed. Do we have any speakers for this item?
We do not have any speakers.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you please call the item?
Items 7A and B for the open air market at Metropolitan Parks, a use permit to allow an open air market at Metropolitan Park, as well as an open air market license agreement.
Thank you. Mr. Schwartz, would you like to introduce staff who will present this item?
Yes, for a brief presentation this evening, Emma Martin and Betsy Herbst are here. Ms. Martin?
Hi there, I'm Emma Martin with Arlington County's Planning Department. Tonight I'll be presenting the Eat Loco open air market use permit item, and with me is Betsy Herbst, and she'll be presenting item 7B. The applicant, Eat Loco LLC, is requesting a use permit for an open air market in Metropolitan Park in the surrounding Metropolitan Park parcels, as well as in the right-of-way of South Elm Street from 14th Street South to 13th Street South. As proposed, the operations will consist of 71 vendors selling produce and proteins, packaged food products, hot food prepared on site, and craftspeople selling handmade items. The market will operate on Saturdays beginning at the end of March through the end of November, each year between 9 a.m. and 1 p.m., with setup as early as 7 a.m. and breakdown ending by 2 p.m. The proposed market location along South Elm Street would result in a street closure during operation of the market from 7 to 2 p.m. The proposal is consistent with the Metropolitan Park Public Space Master Plan and Design Guidelines. Staff is supportive of the proposed vendor locations in and around the central green shown on the slide and in South Elm Street, subject to the applicant obtaining necessary right-of-way permit and approvals by the Department of Environmental Services to operate within county-owned right-of-way. In addition, a license agreement to use Metropolitan Park public space for the proposed open-air market is associated with this use permit. The applicant agreed to a condition to maintain a minimum of 6-foot clear width on sidewalks and pathways throughout Metropolitan Park that will be used for the market to provide for pedestrian circulation. The applicant also agreed to maintain a minimum of 5 feet clearance between the tents and the curbs located near the ends of the Metropolitan Park Central Green in order to protect the planted edges, as well as to provide for pedestrian access to the Central Green. The applicant's proposing to use South Fair Street for vendor parking and loading for the tents on and around the Central Green, and proposes to use South Elm Street for loading and vending for the tents in the right-of-way on South Elm Street. The applicant proposes that vendors will be organized into specific time blocks so that they'll be able to pull up, unload, and then park their vehicles in the parking garage prior to tent setup to avoid traffic congestion. Parking for vendors and patrons meeting the 7-foot height requirement will be in the nearby shared Metropolitan Park Phase 6, 7, and 8 parking garage that has an entrance on 13th Street. And vendors that exceed that 7-foot height requirement will access the on-street parking on South Fair Street. The proposed market's going to be situated in a densely populated area, which is Pentagon City, and that's easily accessible by multiple modes of transportation. For this use permit, staff reached out to the Aurora Highlands Civic Association, the National Landing Business Improvement District, and the Crystal City Civic Association. The National Landing Business Improvement District and Crystal City Civic Association provided letters of support for the market, and the Aurora Highlands Civic Association did not provide a response. The proposed market function and layout is consistent with the Metropolitan Park Public Space Master Plan and Design Guidelines and aligns with the retail plan's goal of support for open-air markets and outdoor venues in Arlington, and facilitates opportunities for local and independent and regional retail operators. Further, staff received letters of support from the aforementioned Civic Association and Business Improvement District. Staff believes that the closure of South Elm Street adjacent to Metropolitan Park will not impact traffic circulation within the Metropolitan Park development, and operation of the market is not expected to prohibit access to adjacent businesses nor disrupt their activity during the proposed market time. As proposed, staff does not anticipate the use will create undue adverse impacts on the surrounding community, won't be detrimental to public welfare or injurious to property or improvements in the area or neighborhood, and will not be in conflict with purposes of the master plans. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the use permit, subject to conditions with the county board review in 1 year. This will give the community, the county board, and staff time to assess the impact, and if should there be any adverse impacts identified, they can be addressed at that time. The item was pulled from the Saturday consent agenda since the license agreement had not been signed by all owners, and since that agreement was pulled, the use permit was pulled as well.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Ms.
Hi.
Herbst.
Yes, hi, I'm Betsy Herbst. I'm with the Real Estate Bureau, and I have worked on the license agreement portion of this project. But there is a lot of overlap with the license agreement and the use permit, but with one difference. The areas for open markets that operate on county-owned property or within a county-owned public park or public use easement require a license to allow the use of the county-owned real property interests. And in this case, the open air market license also requires the consent of the underlying property owners, which in this case are Acorn Development and Millennium Owner LLCs. There's only one particular area on 2 different parcels or 3 different parcels of the proposed market that are within the county easement. So the license is limited to those areas and is subject to the use permit conditions. This license agreement is similar to others that we have on county-owned property or county easements. It specifies the days and hours of the market, similar to the use permit, including setup and breakdown times. It is renewable annually upon the payment of a $200 license fee and the receipt of proof of insurance, subject to the existence of a valid use permit. It requires a commercial general liability insurance policy naming the county as insured, requires the licensee to remove all trash and debris, maintain the area in a clean and safe condition, and that allows the county to terminate the license without cause by providing 30 days prior written notice to the licensee. One other term, it requires the licensee to work with the surrounding neighborhood civic associations regarding signage, permissible parking locations, and noise restrictions. So regarding the license permit, we do have, or the license agreement, we do have electronic signatures. At this point, staff would recommend that the county board approve the license agreement subject to receipt of the wet signatures of all the parties on the original document agreed to by the licensee and the county, and subject to receipt of evidence of proper authority to bind the owners. Answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Herbst. And so we had, for the record, note that I think representatives of eLoco are here present. You're not required to make a presentation unless you're dying to do so. Great, good to see you. And I don't believe we have any advisory group presentations on this. All right, so the discussion is now with the county board, and at any point, someone can make a motion. That'll be certainly in order. Ms. Crystal.
Colleagues, I move that we approve the use permit for an open air market subject to the proposed conditions in the staff report, and that comes back to us for review in 1 year, May 2024, and that we further approve the open air market license agreement between us, the County Board of Arlington, and Eat Loco as licensee, Acorn Development LLC, and Millennium Owner LLC, both as owners, for operation of an open-air market at Met Park, which is located within a county public park easement and a public use and access easement on the properties located respectively at 1312 South Elm, 1221 South Fern, and 1301 South Fern. I also move that we authorize the Real Estate Bureau Chief or his designee to execute the license agreement subject to approval by the county attorney.
Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Karantonis. Ms. Crystal, would you like to have any remarks?
I think we look forward to this use and to seeing this envisioned area come to life.
Thank you. Mr. Karantonis, any remarks?
Welcome to Eat Loco, to the county, assuming that we will vote in the affirmative here. This is your first market east and south of Route 28. I understand that. So that's a different market for you, and for us, it's an excellent location. This is a very popular location. So I had some conversations with neighbors and others about how accessible our markets are for people of all incomes and all types of, benefits. A big number, a significant number of markets, farmers markets in Arlington, including the one that happens in front of this building every Saturday, accept SNAP benefits. They also accept VIC benefits, etc. So we sort of have the expectation to see you, offering this to them, and we are here to offer any assistance you may need with this. Other than that, this is an excellent, very popular, it's extremely accessible location. It's very close, it's a metro accessible location. So I think that it will be beneficial for the markets, not only just, making it accessible for Arlingtonians with lower moderate incomes, but also making it, generally accessible to people. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other further comments? Colleagues, as has been noted by our staff, this item had been included on our consent agenda, and so would not have had this benefit of this public conversation, and at which time I was prepared to present a slide which highlighted a couple key features, and I'll just use them now. It's obviously a lot of demand for open air markets of this type. eLoco's got a great reputation, so there's going to be a lot of existing and new entrants to the community who are certainly going to patronize this, and with over 70 vendors providing a variety of options, it's certainly going to be a jewel in the open market inventory that we have in Arlington. Any further comments? Seeing none, we're now ready to move to a vote. All those in favor of Ms. Crystal's motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it 4-0. The use permit as well as the license agreement are hereby approved. Thank you all. I do have an additional item for you colleagues, and it is a motion to authorize our attorney to approve a compromise settlement. So I move that the county board authorize the county attorney to file in a final form approved by the county attorney a joint petition for approval of a compromise settlement in the workers' compensation claim JCN, VA 000019065113-01, now pending before the Virginia Workers' Compensation Commission. Seconded by Mr. DeFerranti. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those, Mr. Karantonis? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it 4-0. Ms. Jacobs, is there any other additional business to come before the board today?
There is not.
Okay, hearing none. The May County Board meeting is hereby adjourned. We'll see everyone in June, if not before. Good night.